When you're completely broken, you expect the fix to be a massive, overnight miracle. You think you need a new job, a new city, or $1 million. But when we looked at 100 men who actually dragged themselves out of the ashes, their first step wasn't external. It was a silent, brutal choice they made in the dark. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for a savior. They wait for luck. They wait for a perfect opportunity. But the men who actually rebuild their lives don't wait. They realize a terrifying truth. No one is coming to save you. Your parents can't fix it. Your friends can't fix it. The government isn't going to rewrite your story. You are entirely on your own. So, if you are ready to stop waiting and break the cycle, subscribe to the Shadow Code Self-Improving channel right now. Because today, we are exposing the exact first step 100 men took to completely rebuild their lives from scratch. The first step. Every single one of these 100 men started in a completely different place. Some were broke, others were completely trapped by addiction. They didn't share the same background, and they didn't have the same resources. But the moment they decided to burn their old lives to the ground, the absolute first step every single one of them took was to stop pointing fingers. They completely ended the excuses. They looked in the mirror and accepted a brutal truth. It might not be your fault that you broke, but it is 100% your responsibility to fix it. They stopped blaming their past, their bosses, their childhoods, or the economy. This is the exact core of ancient Stoicism. The Stoics believe that you cannot control what happens to you, but you have total control over how you respond. They realized a dangerous psychological truth. As long as the blame belongs to someone else, the power to fix your life belongs to them too. When you say, "I am stuck because of my past," you give your past total control over your future. By taking total responsibility, these 100 men took their power back. They looked in the mirror and accepted the most uncomfortable fact in human psychology. You are exactly where you deserve to be based on the choices you have made. It is a bitter pill to swallow. It makes your stomach turn. But the moment you accept that you built your own prison is the exact moment you realize you hold the keys to escape. Killing the victim. Mindset. Every single one of these 100 men had a story. A story about how they got cheated, how they got fired, or how they were dealt a bad hand by life. And for a long time, they wore that story. When you are at the bottom, complaining feels good. It gives you a cheap hit of comfort. It lets you say, "See? It's not my fault I'm losing. The world is just against me." But the men who successfully rebuilt themselves recognized this as a massive mental trap. They decided that even if the storm around them was chaotic, they were the absolute captain of the ship. They stopped sharing their problems with people who didn't care. They stopped looking for pity. Pity doesn't pay the bills. Pity doesn't build muscle. Pity doesn't fix a broken mind. They realized that the world doesn't care about your excuses, and the market doesn't care about your feelings. So they buried the victim version of themselves in the dirt and completely changed how they operated. Facing the damage. Once they accepted that they were entirely responsible for everything, they forced themselves to look directly at the damage. They sat down with a piece of paper and conducted a brutal, honest audit of their lives. No lying, no sugarcoating, no hiding. They looked at their bank accounts and wrote down the exact, ugly number. They looked at their bodies in the mirror and admitted they had let themselves go. They looked at their daily habits and realized they were wasting hours staring at screens. Most people are too terrified to look at the truth of where they are. They don't check their bank accounts because it stresses them out. They don't weigh themselves because it hurts their feelings. But you cannot fix a bug in your system if you refuse to look at the code. These 100 men faced the numbers. They faced reality. To fix it, they embraced the famous Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, the art of making continuous, tiny improvements. They understood that rebuilding a life isn't about making a massive, overnight jump. It's about clearing away the garbage one piece at a time. They stopped trying to build the entire wall at once and just focused on laying one perfect brick every single day. Going completely dark. But they also knew they couldn't build a new life using the exact same environment that destroyed their old one. Part of owning their reality meant changing who they allowed around them. When these 100 men decided to climb, they temporarily vanished. They went into a strategic isolation. They cut off the low-standard friend groups. They stopped going to places that drained their energy. They turned off the notifications. They understood that you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. If you are surrounded by people who have zero ambition, your own drive will naturally die. So, they chose temporary loneliness over being average forever. They built a strict, non-negotiable daily routine. Wake up at the same time, move the body, do the hard, boring, repetitive work. Limit the distractions. In the beginning, their brains screamed for comfort. The old habits begged them to come back to the couch, to the phone, to the easy lifestyle. But they stood their ground. They learned to sit with boredom. They realized that discipline isn't about feeling motivated. Discipline is doing what you hate to do, but doing it like you love it. They stopped trying to impress people who didn't matter and focused on finally being proud of the man in the mirror. Breaking the fake wins. Finally, they completely rebuild how they rewarded themselves. When you are at the bottom, your brain is starved for success, and you want a massive win immediately. Whenever these men had a good day, whenever they worked for just an hour or saved a little money, their brain would instantly say, "Good job, you deserve a break. Let's go celebrate." They realized this was a trap that kills momentum before it even starts. To break this loop, they stopped rewarding themselves for just showing up. They stopped celebrating the warm-up. Instead, they placed their rewards strictly behind major milestones. They trained their minds to fall in love with the hard work, not just the prize. They realized that the ultimate reward wasn't the money, the status, or the praise. The ultimate reward was the strong, resilient person they were becoming through the struggle. They became addicted to execution. They became obsessed with daily progress. And slowly, day by day, the numbers changed. The body changed. The mindset shifted. The man who finally stepped out of the dark was completely unrecognizable to the man who first fell in. Rebuilding your life doesn't require a miracle. It requires a decision. You do not need an apology from the people who hurt you, and you definitely do not need to wait for the perfect mood. You just need to own your current reality. The 100 men who dragged themselves out of the dark didn't have special powers. They just stopped making excuses. Your past is unchangeable, but your future is an open canvas. Stop pointing fingers, leave your comfort zone, and get to work.